I'm going to call to order the Finance Committee on Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023 at 7:02 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. Mayor Donches was unable to make it today, and I am filling in as the Vice Chair. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderman Moran. Alderwoman Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Gouveia.
Here.
Alderman Camo is here, and Alderman Clee.
Here.
So you have 4 in attendance, 3 not in attendance.
Also in attendance in the chamber is Director Sullivan, Ms. Stansfield, Amy Gerard. Looks like Cheryl's escaped. And online we have Dan Hudson, David Bouchard, Jeff LaFleur, John Ibarra, Mr. Mike Rush, I'm sorry, and I don't know who that other caller is. It may just be part of another, could be Mr. Rush.
Alderman Clee, that's actually Mike Rush. He had to call in. His mic isn't working on his computer.
That's what I was thinking. So thank you so much, Ms. LaFleur. Is there anybody here for a public comment? Seeing none. Communications.
Communication has been received from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regards to the purchase of additional pay stations. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of 4 additional pay stations for School Street and the West Pearl Street from Flowbird, formerly of Kale America Incorporated of Tampa, Florida, in the amount of $29,200. Funding will be through Department 166 Parking, Fund 55699, Other Contracted Services / Parking Expenditures, ETF.
Thank you. We have Ms. Stansfield, and just for clarification for Alderwoman Timmons, this is for a pay station, not PlayStations. Thank you very much. Now that we have that clarified. Ms. Stansfield, if you could.
Thank you, Jill Stansfield, Parking Manager. This is to purchase 4 additional pay stations, same machines we have on Main Street, 2 of which will go over on School Street for the new parking that'll be under the Flats building. And 2 of them will be going onto West Pearl Street after the redesign of that street has been completed. They are same price as we've been charged for a number of years. They've kept the pricing the same on these, so we're good with that. Any other questions on it?
Any of the members have questions? Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have just a quick question. The ones on West Pearl Street make sense to me, and just when we're talking about the ones on School Street, I guess the question is it needed that there are 2 there, or what kind of went into that decision-making instead of going 1 to 2?
So there's going to be 2 pedestrian entranceways to that parking. So 2 should be perfect for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Communication has been received from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. I'd like to make a motion to approve the engineering services contract for development of a city-owned bridges capital improvement plan with Hoyle Tanner and Associates Incorporated of Manchester, New Hampshire, in an amount not to exceed $37,519. Funding will be through Department 160 Admin Engineering, Fund 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / Capital.
I think Mr. Hudson is here for that one.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. So this proposal is to develop a bridge capital program. We have 16 vehicular bridges that are on the state's list. And the state, although DOT looks at them every couple of years, does an inspection, the information we get back is kind of category rated. So, you may have one that's a condition 4 out of 5 and that sort of thing, which gives us some indication of what is needed to be repaired. But what Hoyle Tanner will do is they'll review all those reports. They'll go out and physically inspect each bridge, and they'll give us a much better plan for exactly, how much money we need to spend now and in the future to keep these bridges in good condition. So that's the proposal, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion is carries forward. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Communication has been received from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of recycling and trash carts and cart lids for curbside collection for fiscal year '23 from Toter Incorporated of Statesville, North Carolina, in an amount not to exceed $145,000. Funding will be through Department 168 Solid Waste, Fund 71630, Toter/Solid Waste Fund.
And I think Mr. LaFleur is here to speak on that one.
Yes, thank you. Jeff LaFleur, Superintendent of Solid Waste. This is exactly what it says in the motion. It's for $145,000 worth of toters. We probably won't spend that much, but I want to order a couple loads before the end of the fiscal year to have some in stock. Our toters are over 24 years old, and they're starting to break down, so we just want to replenish what we have in stock.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Ms. LaFleur.
Thank you. Communication has been received from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. I'd like to make a motion to approve Amendment 1 to the Construction Phase Services Contract with Wright Pierce for the Phase 2 Upgrades Project in an amount not to exceed $110,191. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater, Fund 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / Wastewater Fund.
I see that Mr. Boucher is here. Would you like to speak on this?
Yes, thank you. Dave Boucher, Wastewater Superintendent. This is for the engineering oversight of our pump station Phase 2 upgrades. The original completion date was to be this June. However, due to the supply chain shortages, mostly for electrical components, generators and transformers, there's been delays. So the project has been extended out for a substantial completion in January of 2024 with a final completion of April of 2024. Some of the engineering oversight costs was used up during the first portion of Phase 2 due to extra design effort, due to changes in design. So we were running short on covering to June, but this amount would take us to the end of the substantial completion. Well, actually, the final completion in April. I
Thank
can answer
you.
any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question? No. Okay, sorry. Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that motion carries. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Communication has been received from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of a full drive assembly for clarifier number 2 from Evoqua Water Technologies of Waukesha, Wisconsin, in the amount of $55,588.41. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater Fund, 81200 Building and Improvements / Wastewater Fund.
And again, I believe this is Mr. Boucher.
Dave Boucher, Wastewater Superintendent. So this is a drive to replace the existing drive that we have. It broke during our extreme cold temperatures. We were hoping to be able to rebuild the existing one. Unfortunately, it's obsolete and beyond repair anyway. So this is a drive to replace the existing one. Just for our explanation, we have 3 large tanks with an arm that goes around and collects sludge on the bottom and collects scum off the top. So this drive powers that whole arm.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And the motion carries. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Communication has been received from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. I'd like to make a motion to approve and award a contract for aquatic invasive species control in the Nashua River to Solitude Lake Management in the amount of $121,456. Funding will be through Department 185 Sustainability Fund Grant Funds, NHDES, $58,753, and account 53142 Consulting Services / General Fund for $62,703.
Thank you, and I see Director Sullivan is here for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Sullivan, Community Development Director. As was just spoken to, this is an annual request to support aquatic species or invasive management treatment. The total contract amount is actually supported by a 50% grant that we received through the state of New Hampshire through the Department of Environmental Services, but we return to this body on an annual basis to re-request this funding source. The work specifically this year will be an herbicide treatment that will be done in 2 specific locations to control milfoil and fanwort, and that's on the Nashua River and on Sandy Pond. On Sandy Pond particularly, we also treat some other invasives that have been noticed there, being curly leaf pondweed and algae, being unique to the Sandy Pond situation, but those 2 locations will be the priority treatment areas for this year. For those that have been on this committee in the past, and for those that are new, typically, we come in with a larger request that also includes Mill Pond and the Nashua Canal. Those treatments are typically done on a biannual or at every 2-year basis. And so those are not included in the request presented before you this evening, but will be back before you next year. And just as a note, for those that are not familiar, we do a voluntary biannual twice a year water chestnut pulling as well as some of our kayakers. Water chestnuts are a huge issue for us as another invasive species that we have to address through a different method. Luckily, we're able to use the volunteer hours to actually do that, and they're not included within the request before you this evening. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
No, but I have to say, I'm happy to see that Sandy Pond was added to that. That's been an issue over the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Communication has been received from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of one 2023 Freightliner cab and chassis with body and plow package from Viking Chives of Williston, Vermont, in the amount of $243,747. Funding will be through Department 161, Street Department, Fund 81500, Vehicles/Surf.
I believe Mr. Ibarra is here for that one.
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. John Ibarra, Superintendent of Street Department. So you may recall we went for this very vehicle back in February of this year. And as we sought to seek the approvals, we were approved. During the process, somehow the truck was sold out from under us. So we had to go back to seeking the replacement of truck 125. And our fleet manager, Mike Brush, was able to obtain a comparable bid. Actually came in about $1,700 cheaper to go with a Freightliner cab and chassis with the same upfit cab package. So we're looking to get our approval and get this deal done to replace truck 125, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go any further, okay, that's what it is. Okay, I knew there was something else in the agenda, and I finally just saw it on our list here. So without any objection, I'm going to accept the communication and place it on file for the emergency PO request, fire apparatus replacement. Are there any questions or on that? Okay, and that goes on file. Thank you. Unfinished business,
There's none.
tabled in committee.
Are we taking this off the table?
I don't
tonight,
think
Madam
so.
Chair?
No.
Then there is none.
None.
Madam Chair, can I comment on our table in
Item,
committee item?
technically, we're supposed to take it off table to have the conversation. So if you'd like to make a motion, we can do that.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll move to remove the communication from the table.
Okay. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye, and that is off the table. Alderman Gouveia.
Yeah, I'm just getting a little concerned over this because every time we've delayed a purchase or we've seen the delay in purchase, we've seen that price tag go up on the item. And I know we're waiting to see if we were to go electric, what the price would be on that. And I think what I'm worried about now is what will happen if we keep waiting on this and the price will go up just like everything else we've seen in this committee. So it's more of, I'm not saying we should pass it now, but it's just kind of, I'm getting a little anxious about how long we keep it on the table and how long that deal will stay at that 57,000 mark before we're gonna be spending more money regardless of what option we use.
I absolutely agree with you on that, and I see that Alderman Como has a question, but Ms. Gerard, would you be able to speak to this? I know that when we first tabled it, they were going to guarantee us a certain amount of time. My opinion is I'm happy to move forward with it if it's a will of the committee, so.
Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. So we have looked at alternative solutions so that we can meet the resolution that was recently passed. We currently have a bid out for Chevy Bolts. We are, taking this resolution very seriously and want to be in compliance with the electric vehicles.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, I think the resolution was said whenever possible.
Whenever possible,
Right.
correct.
And I agree with what Alderman Govea said, that the delaying of this could, in essence, create a higher cost in the end. And I can see Director Sullivan is also kind of itching to possibly say something.
Yeah, he's welcome to join me. So based off of the research that I've done, I believe that the Chevy Bolts will be fairly comparably priced. I'm estimating approximately $30,000 per vehicle for this. So that is just a slight increase over what these Ford Escapes were. But we have, the green energy efficiencies that we're looking for with an electric vehicle that will end up being a bigger cost savings.
In the life of the
Yes,
vehicle.
over the life cycle of the vehicle. Director Sullivan, did you want to say anything?
I think you covered it quite well.
Okay.
If there are additional questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay. Alderman Como, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I wish that Chief Buxton was here because if my memory serves, I thought he said that we had a deadline on the bid that we had for the current vehicles, the Chevys. Does our contract or, does our purchasing agreement with Chevy expire at some point?
So this is not using a purchasing agreement. We are doing a formal bid process for the bolts.
Okay.
So we are testing the market.
Okay, then I do have another question.
Sure.
At the last meeting, if my memory serves me correct, lately it hasn't been that great, but if it serves me correct, they did say that they would honor it until, I thought it was like the end of the month or something to that nature. If we delay this much longer, because we're not gonna have another meeting for at least 2 more weeks or so.
Right.
And then it's gotta go through all that process there, as was brought forward, and justifiably so, will we lose this price in the end?
I believe that the direction is to go towards the electric vehicles and not to move forward potentially with these Ford Escapes as long as the Chevy Bolts come in where we think that they will be.
So if this price goes,
Let me.
okay, I was gonna say, so if this price goes up, we're kind of tying our hands to the cheaper, then at that point, then the electric becomes cheaper just by design, so.
Matt Sullivan. So I appreciate Ms. Gerard's comments, and we've been working very actively, particularly through Doria Brown and Deb Chisholm, the Sustainability Department, to try and successfully implement the intent of the recently passed resolution relative to the energy goals. As part of doing that, we've recognized that although those goals are advisory in nature, there are some immediate opportunities as part of our fleet procurement process to actually have some wins, if you will, immediately that come at a lower long-term cost to the city and even a lower short-term cost to the city. And I think the transition away from gas-powered vehicles towards EVs, particularly on smaller passenger vehicles, is where that opportunity exists. And so at the risk of letting the cat out of the bag to some extent, There'll be a communication issued within your Board of Aldermen packet next week relative to this exact issue and how we'll be implementing those energy goals within the procurement process for all vehicles included within the SURF. And what it's functionally going to say is that from a policy perspective, we are moving forward when it comes to passenger vehicles and light duty vehicles, whether that be smaller trucks or vans, to make sure that an evaluation of alternatives is done for every one of those. That does not mean that the evaluation of alternatives will always produce a preferred vehicle that comes to this committee that will be an electric vehicle. The one exception to that will be if it is truly a passenger vehicle by nature. I believe this city's policy at the direction of the mayor is that those should be electric vehicle purchases whenever the opportunity presents itself. Obviously, we may be in a situation where the cost simply does not work from an economic perspective, but relative to this request before you this evening, or the tabled request that's been removed from the table, we believe that the prior request that was for a gas-powered vehicle can easily be lined up with a comparable electric vehicle. And so while there's concern about losing our access to the vehicles that are on your agenda proper, we believe there's an alternative that will be brought forward, a new preferred alternative that will be an electric vehicle. So we are accepting the risk that we might lose these vehicles, but there's really an appetite for and a policy statement in the direction of securing EVs for this type of application. And that's what you're going to see brought back to you at the Finance Committee.
Oh, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Alderman Govea.
Thank you. More discussion than any questions. I think that answers it. Like, I'm not here to sweat a $3,000 difference on the cars. So I think if we're thinking it will be around 60, I think that's fine with me if we wanted to pay the extra for electric there. And I know this is the first time we've kind of gone through since passing that ordinance comparing electric to non-electric vehicles, and just hope going forward we can kind of get those numbers both at once, therefore we can make that decision instantly instead of waiting a couple meetings down the road. But I think that's all hiccups we'll get over.
And I think that's the intent that Director, no, I don't want to say something. I see that look on his face.
No, and because I don't want to let something go sort of unresponded to. So I want to be clear that when the process that you'll see laid out in the memo next week to you, and this is of course subject for discussion, but the process we've laid out is that the Finance Committee will only review the preferred alternative that is presented to it. You'll be reviewing one vehicle to ultimately approve. What will accompany that is some level of an evaluation that you will be able to see that essentially will say, we looked at alternatives and this is the one we're recommending. And so our goal is to put one vehicle in front of you, obviously make a defensible case as to why that's the vehicle that's being presented, but to rely on our subject matter experts, our fleet managers, and our sustainability department to sort of arrive at that preferred alternative together that will then be brought to you. But I don't want this committee to be put in the position of having to do that evaluation right here at the committee. We're going to bring you an alternative that we feel is best, if that makes sense.
And I think that was probably at least that was my understanding, that we would be doing it that way. But that we would see with the other one, so that if it was a big difference, we would have that opportunity. Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that answers my question pretty thoroughly. I think with me, I would just want to make sure we see the prices of what the electric is compared to those alternatives as well, just to see the number difference. I think that would help me at least on this committee.
I agree. Any other questions? Alderman Gouveia, do you have, or Alderman Camo, do you have motions?
I move to put it back on the table.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, and that is back on the table, and we look forward to seeing additional information. New business resolutions?
There are none.
New business ordinances?
There are none.
Record of expenditures?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from April 14th, 2023 to April 27th, 2023.
If there are no objections, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries as well. Thank you very much. General discussion. Anyone? Public comment? Seeing no one from the public, we'll move on. Remarks by the alderman? Alderwoman Timmons.
Well, thank you. I just want to point out that this past Saturday, the where the National NAACP had a successful fundraiser, and it just was great. I just have to say that, so that's all I have to say.
And I'm sorry that I had to miss it. Any other comments? Well, I just want to share my last week's experience. For those that, I wasn't around most of last week because I was in the hospital. I was at St. Joseph Hospital. I spent the first 24 hours in the ER because there were no beds. It's an amazing place, but ER is no place to have to sleep. And I was telling Alderman Como that they would probably have to have 2 gurneys for him, and he would not be able to roll over at all. So, but the staff was wonderful, and I'm grateful to be out of there. 2 hospital stays in 14 days I spent 7 out of 14 days in the hospital. So, but I'm back, and hopefully I stay back. If there's nothing else, I will go to you. Alderman Como?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And we adjourn at 7:28 PM. Thank you, everybody who came to.